I'm Michelle Ellsworth, and I'm going to tell you about my research. To start, I'd like to acknowledge that I live and work upon lands within the territories of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. I acknowledge the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up Colorado. I'm very grateful to be on this land. Also, to start, I'd like to acknowledge the profound impact my collaborators have had on me and the work. Here are some of their names. When I put together this list, I was delighted to realize that, with the exception of 4 names, all of these artists, thinkers, makers are attached to CU, either as current or past faculty or students. Super grateful to them all. Okay, to start, I want to show you a rock. I made this rock in 2010. This rock is based on a real rock that I found in nature in Boulder by the Boulder Creek. I took the real rock and I made a rubber mold of it so that I could make more rocks, so that I could make fake rocks. Here's the rubber mold. I filled the rubber mold with concrete and then was able to, make rocks. And here are 3 rocks. So these rocks have hamburgers suspended in them. That labor was part of a piece I made called theburgerfoundation.org. Now, there are multiple ways of looking at these rocks. One could look at these rocks and talk about things like the relationship of beef-based burgers to climate change. Or one could look at them and talk about the nature of authenticity. Or one could look at these rocks and discuss the histories and experiences of the rocks we see around us. So many different ways to look at the rocks. Likewise with anything, particularly art, I would say, there are so many ways to read a work. And I personally have always resisted suggesting any particular read of my work, but today I'm going to try. I'm going to try and focus for you where my labor and my research and these rocks that you saw, and then rocks that look just like these rocks but are different than these rocks that are more recently minted that I will show you later, intersect with 3 things. Those things are contemporary technology, and for that I'm thinking algorithmic art, machine learning, AI in general, and digital ownership. 2, I'm thinking classical and ancient Greek thinkers. And 3, language. Now, I often return to these neighborhoods because I feel curious and suspicious and concerned about the impact and consequences of some of their founding premises. The founding premises of the classics and technology, particularly around things like knowledge, experience, identity, reality, and value. And I'm interested also in how language functions with these 2 disciplines, the role that language plays in the distribution and construction of some of these ideas, assumptions, and convictions, and how those ideas, assumptions, and convictions impact bodies. So I often find myself both post and pre-verbal when talking about my work. I feel resistance, not dissimilar to the resistance I already mentioned about suggesting just how to read a thing, but also I have resistance to even using words and technology to talk about my work, which is basically what the situation here requires. My resistance comes from the fact that I find that both technology and language, at a certain level, misrepresent me and encourage me to lie. I'm going to try really hard not to do that. So that said, I think I'm going to start by showing you a section of a work called the Post-Verbal Social Network. Okay, what you are watching now is called prototype number 5, the Cellular Automaton. It's one of 30 plus prototypes I made for a piece that I've been working on the last couple of years called the Post-Verbal Social Network. This is me in the short gray hair with Ondine Gary dancing in and out of this large box that sat for about 6 months in my living room as we videoed ourselves thousands of times passing in and out of the box. A box such as this with 5 holes and 2 dancers has 625 different possible entrances and exits. We filmed 2 versions of each possible iteration and filmed some combinations 3 to 8 times, creating over 2 complete sets of all possibilities. It was time-consuming and delightful and exhausting. Programmer Satchel Spencer then took the 1,250 plus videos and created a variation of a well-studied in computer science, cellular automaton. Think John Conway's Game of Life or Rule 30, where a grid of cells, each with some internal state, interact with each other to produce a new state. Said another way, a cell's state, meaning what is happening in it, including how the dancers get in and out of the cell, depends solely on its neighbor. For instance, a cell whose right neighbor has a dancer exiting the left will then have a dancer enter from the right. So Satchel Spencer's custom-built Cellular Automaton video rendering program linked together the over 1,250 micro dances such that they could be recombined infinitely across time and space. The video you are watching is documentation of an algorithm that works autonomously, and every time it runs, it creates a unique sequence of passages through the grid of cells. So this video you are watching was not made with video editing. It is not a post-production effort. The video was created by the algorithm. In short, the syntax of both computer programming and choreography kind of commingled to create this post-verbal system of meaning and community. Okay, so that was one of the prototypes for the post-verbal social network. And to give you a little more context for that work, I'm going to show you a little trailer of a few more of the post-verbal social network prototypes. So you can think of all of these as experiments, some prototypes, some possible solutions to some of the problems I have experienced with language. These prototypes are attempting to create meaningful interaction/communication without words. While you are watching these, I want to clarify that clearly I am not a computer science programmer/researcher, nor a formal student of the Greek classics. I'm a dancer, and as a dancer, I centralize the bodies, and I centralize the impact bodies experience and the impacts that bodies inflict on other bodies, and I don't just mean human bodies. My research on post-verbal social networks specifically helped me to start to comprehend the impact that languages have on bodies. Think the impact of languages like Greek and English, but also computer languages like JavaScript and C. There is no doubt that these language impact bodies inside cultures, political systems, damaged environments. Here again, I have a very expansive definition of bodies, so please don't even assume that I'm speaking just about mammals. Okay, so those were some prototypes. And with these thoughts on language that I just hit on, I'm gonna return to the Greeks and show you a bit of a work called Clitigation, State of Exception. Okay, this work looks at the Oresteia and tries to create a better situation for Clytemnestra than the one that Aeschylus wrote for her in the Oresteia in the 5th century BC. So just a quick refresher, Clytemnestra is the wife of Agamemnon. Agamemnon is the leader of the Greeks in Troy. In the Oresteia, written by Aeschylus, Clytemnestra kills Agamemnon when he returns from Troy and then is murdered by her son. I didn't love the plotline of the Oresteia, so I thought I would attempt to create for Clytemnestra a better situation than the one created by Aeschylus. So I proposed that she live in a blue box and use chroma key technology to 1, complicate her location and to create a surveillance-free space to help her avoid being murdered, and 2, to create a situation that was generally better, a life that was better and longer and visually more compelling than the one that Aeschylus assigned her. So on the left, you see her unmediated body, Clytemnestra's unmediated body, and on the right, you see a remix into the new context with technology of her body. The dancer you see on the right is Jad Tank, an amazing dancer and CU alum. He is Clytemnestra's body double. Again, safety first. He is a copy of my copy of Clytemnestra. I'm inside the box on the right controlling VJ software to change my body double's context. I'm trying to use dance and technology to undo Aeschylus's language-generated and language-preserved story about Clytemnestra and justice. I'm also wondering where the real authentic Clytemnestra sits. I'm thinking about Plato and some of his ideas in Book 7 of the Republic, where he talks about the allegory of the cave. I'm thinking, what is real? What is shadow? And who makes the shadows? And I'm thinking about Book 10 of the Republic, where Plato blandishes artists from the city because he thinks artists are thrice removed from the real, true, ideal form of a thing. Remember, for Plato, there is the ideal form of the table that exists in God's mind or in nature, and then there's the table that the carpenter makes, and then there is the painting of or poem about the table that the artists make, which is just an imitation of the appearance of the carpenter's table, thrice removed from the ideal form of the table. He thinks an artist can fool small children into thinking their painting of a carpenter or a table is real. Okay, let me pause here and say that I get it. Plato might think that my table is a copy of a copy of a copy. He might think that my replica of the real rock is sneaky and disingenuous. He might think that I know nothing about rocks. He no doubt would say that my rock replica is thrice removed from the ideal form of a rock. I get it. I'm just saying I get it. Okay, language, the Greeks, technology. In addition to making Clytemnestra the surveillance-free blue box that you just saw, I built with my collaborators a completely offline internet for Clytemnestra. We made over 30 websites that Clytemnestra could access without being connected to the internet. They function in any browser, and all of the links that you see in the pages that I'm going to show you are real, meaning they really go somewhere. They really link to additional content. In addition to all these websites that we made, we also made video reenactments of Clytemnestra's most consistent conversations with Agamemnon, her husband, Penelope, Helen, and Aegisthus. So the idea was to try and keep Clytemnestra safe, emotionally engaged, and surveillance-free. Because the fact is that the thing about the internet and humans is the internet, well, it's always listening. People, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but both are always consistently insecure. So it seemed like a good idea to lock that down in terms of her security. Okay, let me just show you a bit of Clytemnestra's World Wide Web. Okay, here's Pandora. All of these ads and links are active. So from this playlist, I can access Daedalus's sister's replacement apparatus, where Clytemnestra can shop for both the emotionally and physically absent man. Here's the male gaze simulator and other things. We come over here. We can click on this link to the mower. This was an idea of one of my collaborators, Uli Miller, that Clytemnestra living online perpetually might feel isolated and miss nature. And this is like a lawn mowing simulator that might take the edge off the limitations of living in the blue box and again, living offline. Here we can link to World Women Varying Burgers, and from there we can link to Burger, Craft, and Torture, just giving Clytemnestra, meat-based companions to take the edge off, the absence of real people. Because people and the internet are both inescapably problematic. That's why it's totally offline. A lot of the sites are replicas of what you can find on the internet, but some of them were things that didn't yet exist but should. I thought Clytemnestra would enjoy. Okay, here I can link to lamentation dances with tubes for when she worries about Agamemnon and the plague. But if the tubes haven't arrived yet, post-ordering, she can go to without tubes Here is a TED Talk about hyperventilation. Here is a link to pharmaceuticalart.org, and I'm just going to click here. This work is based on something Duchamp said about artists and self-medicating, and I thought, yeah, that's right, maybe so, let's do it, that's a good idea, and these might be handy for Clytemnestra. So that's what these are. Inside these gel caps are little micro sculptures, paintings, and poems, and they are vegan and gluten-free. So I made about 1,500 of these gel caps for a gig, and at one point I was running out of time. And one of my collaborators, Bruce Miller, suggested I start making placebos. So some of these gel caps are real art and some are placebos, imitations of the imitation of the imitation. Okay, so here we can come here, and this is where I can link to text Homer, to phone Homer and ask Homer directly questions about his writing and some of his choices he made to marginalize women in the Iliad, and other things. My collaborator Satchel Spencer used a chatbot for Homer's responses to my/Clytemnestra's texted questions, and well, the chatbot was shockingly effective. Homer's artificially generated responses are rude and offensive. Homer's/the chatbot's responses reflect the training data that it consumed when learning to use language to write. The chatbot learned how to use language from how people use language on the internet, and the way that many use language is full of old-time Homeric values like misogyny, colonization, pettiness, racism, and violence. It's all in there, so it was super easy to capture Homer's vibe. Okay, super fast, here are the Skype settings where I can set up Skype calls, so Clytemnestra can talk to Aegisthus and Helen and Agamemnon and Penelope. Here we can go to Clytemnestra's personality control, and to adjust, I just go to system preferences, and we can increase all these variables. And if Clytemnestra spends too much time somewhere or gets particularly off, this internet setup has someone to check in with her. So here she is. It just seemed important to build in some kind of accountability into
What are you doing?
Environment. Here are the drives. You can adjust those. Here's Twitter. Let's not go there. Let's go to the New York Times simulator. Okay, for this, my collaborator, Satchel Spencer, again, used a Markov chain to generate plausible sounding but fake content. So to make this faux paper that perpetually, it just makes content indefinitely. We fed a Markov chain a bunch of real New York Times articles on specific topics, and then it learns the probability of what words come after what words. It generated article titles and opening section of articles based on the probability of word occurrences. And it gets the syntax really right and can create pretty real but somehow very off-sounding content. But I find, for me, that actually the font is super important in terms of the continuity of what the paper is and what it does. Let's see. Before I show you one more of Clytemnestra's website, I want to return to a conversation about the cellular automaton. After we had finished videoing all the content we needed for the cellular automaton, I was very clear that I did not want to stop crawling in and out of the box. We needed to stop because my collaborator, Max Bernstein, needed their camera for another project. Two of my collaborators came up with two very different solutions to this problem of me not wanting to stop. First, my lighting designer, Ryan Seelig, suggested that we make Bruce Miller make a wood camera. We consistently look for wood-based solutions and thought that would surely take the edge off. And in fact, we did, and I'll show that to you in a minute. But the other solution came from Satchel Spencer, the programmer, who suggested that we use 8 hours of the video we had made for the cellular automaton and train a generative adversarial network, a GAN, to figure out how to replicate images of us crawling in and out of the box. Let me show you what the GAN made. These are all GAN-generated images. A GAN is a form of generative AI. A GAN is a collaborative architecture with a maker and a critiquer. One is learning to create forgeries, and one is learning to recognize forgeries. By learning together, they both get better at their jobs, checking each other's logic and propelling an idea. You can kind of think of a GAN as a black box. It takes a number, could be any number, and spits out an image. If the GAN has not been trained, meaning it hasn't been exposed to training data, it will just spit out static. But with 8 hours of video that we offered it from the cellular automaton shooting, there were, how do I say, that video was shot at 30 frames per second times 60 seconds times 60 minutes. You have 800,000 individual images that the GAN studied to be able to create forgeries. You are just watching a video output of the GAN. It's pretty straightforward in this video, but for the presentation, we weren't interested in just showing this, so we hooked it up to a joystick that the viewer could use to navigate the space of possible images that the GAN can create. So similar images that you put into the box produce similar images, and a series of similar images produces the feel of motion like animation or video. The joystick could be moved through the 2D grid of numbers, allowing one to explore all the little neighborhoods of the latent space, going in and out of the box, changing directions, Okay, this GAN work makes me think again about Plato, and I wonder what he would have thought about machine learning and AI, if he would have considered them 4 or 5 times removed from the ideal form, or if he would have moved GANs and programmers up the ladder towards the ideal form, past artists perhaps, because they use so many numbers, and Plato did love the numbers. Also, I will say that when using a GAN, the interesting bit, not just with GANs, but with any medium or any technology, the interesting bit or the question always is, what are you going to do with it? I'm also going to mention now that I used GANs when I was making the pharmaceutical art. I used, text-to-image GANs and a GPT-2 text generator to make paintings, micro paintings, and also facilitate my poetry writing. That's what you've been looking at there, some of those poems, GAN generated. Okay, so let's return to the idea of the wood camera. Here are some pictures of the first wood camera that Bruce Miller made. I continued to dance and crawl in and out of the big box for an additional month in front of this wood camera. And then we took the box down. I found dancing in front of the wood camera liberating, and I decided to pursue making more dances for wood camera. So Bruce Miller made the next generation of wood camera. And here it is here. This one's got the really good mic and the longer telephoto lens, and here are other images with a shorter lens. And now I'm going to show you some footage. No, not footage. I'm just going to show you some pictures of a rehearsal we took of that Dance for Wood camera. how shall I say, there were absolutely no plastic or digital video cameras capturing the dance. It was only caught on wood camera. These are just photos taken by Satchel Spencer of a rehearsal. The wood camera, it just shoots straight to log. As my brother John says, it puts the log back in analog. So last week, while and after we shot the dance for wood camera, I found myself thinking again about evidence and technology and surveillance and ownership, and the representation and documentation of bodies with wood cameras, with shadows, and the capture of bodies in caves and with technology. So I decided to make Clytemnestra one more website. Here that is. So I'm going there. Here, click on this to go to Clytemnestra's rock-owned NFTs. So basically we decided to make Clytemnestra's rock 3 NFTs. So here you see 3 NFTs that we minted for Clytemnestra, more specifically for her rock. Here are the 3 JPEGs. Here are 3 JPEGs of those NFTs. One is of the wood camera itself. One is of the wood SD card of the dance for camera that captured the dance for camera, and 3 evidence of the choreography for the dance for wood camera. Let me explain a bit what I mean that these NFTs are rock-owned. Okay, the key to the wallet owning all of the 3 rock-owned NFTs was put in a rock. Here are a few photos of our ownership assignment process. So here is the key rolled up and put in a small metal capsule suspended with wire in the middle of a rubber mold. And you will notice, of course, this is the same mold that I used 11 years ago to encase a burger. The mold's 2 halves were put together and held together with a belt and duct tape, cement added, and the key to the NFTs is inside the metal capsule inside the rock. It's in there. All other copies of the keys have been destroyed. Okay, so this is the rock. This rock owns the NFTs. It holds the only key to the certificate of authenticity and ownership. This rock's ownership can be verified by the blockchain. The digital stamp of authenticity for the digital images on Clytemnestra's website are inside this rock, inside this authentic fake rock. So there's not going to be any royalties, no gas fees, no sales, no transactions, and none of the accompanying greenhouse gas emissions will be created. For Clytemnestra, the NFT party starts and ends with the rock. Okay, I think we've come full circle. We started with some rocks and we're ending with another rock. They look the same, but they're very different. There you go. That's where my research intersects with the ancient and classical Greek thinkers, with contemporary technology, and with language. So I'm a dancer. As a dancer in my research, I centralize the bodies, and I focus on the impacts those bodies experience and the impacts they inflict on other bodies. And I don't just mean human bodies. I think that the impact that written and coding languages have on cultures and political systems and environments is profound and often deleterious. Racism and colonization and ableism and homophobia and transphobia and classism and misogyny are embedded in the stories we have ingested from the classical Greeks and in our consumption of technology. The stories and the written languages that deliver them impact us. They impact how technology is used and the way language is used by programmers. And the programmers and their languages and their under consideration and assumptions about all bodies is impacting bodies. Yep, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, are a new form of ownership model. But I have to say, dancers, or some dancers, and maybe dance as a discipline, as a form, resist ownership models. I love how dance cannot be accurately captured by a plastic camera or even by motion capture technology. I love dance's resistance to capture and to capitalism. Sure, languages, they're handy, like Greek and English and JavaScript and C. They're handy. They can help to try and get things organized and efficient. But I have to say, all that optimization and categorizing is not neutral. The impact on bodies is real. Yep, I'm still curious about Plato and the cave. I'm wondering who built that fire, and I'm curious how much greenhouse gas is generated from that fire that is casting those shadows. And I want to know who is benefiting financially from all of our time in the cave. I'm super grateful to do my research in dance. Dance has been the most effective way I have found to, make moves to get out of the cave. Thank you, dance. Thank you, body. Thank you, bodies. Okay, in closing, I just want to show you a list of some of the things I've been reading and watching. All of these thinker, maker, dancers have really helped me dance better and dance more clearly. Also, I want to give a shout out to my home in theater and dance. Super grateful for their expansive definition of dance and also their commitment to ending systemic racism and decolonizing the university. And finally, a shout out one more time to the College of Art and Sciences. Super grateful. I have made the body of my work here. I've been here about 20 years, and I have benefited greatly from the College of Arts and Sciences' commitment to experimental and disciplinary research. Super grateful, super honored. Thank you, thank you.